Well, now, in a moment, a world record for Britain at the World Championships. Is there a limit to how much faster or higher or longer we can go? But first, a quick look at today's other stories. British Coal has launched an investigation into the roof fall at Bilsthorpe Colliery in Nottinghamshire, which killed 3 miners. 3 others who were trapped underground have been rescued. The Queen sent a message of sympathy to the families of the victims. A delicate operation continues tonight, 2,000 feet underground, to recover the bodies of 2 of the victims. The work is dangerous and slow, but needs to be completed before the safety investigators can examine all the evidence. All day at the pit head, supplies for the rescue teams were put on wagons. Underground miners dug their way through thousands of tons of rock. Overnight, the rescue teams did manage to save 3 men, all of whom escaped the nightmare with minor injuries. Paul Smith was trapped for 3 hours.
Flat to the floor, and I thought, I just shouted at everybody, is everybody, everybody all right? And, trying to communicate, but there was just nothing, and it kept coming in all the time. So I just had to scratch my way, and I found a safe position, and I stopped there, to keep the roof support up above my head, you see.
8 Israeli soldiers were killed in 2 separate attacks by Hezbollah bombers in southern Lebanon today. 7 were killed early this morning. Israeli warplanes retaliated this afternoon, and 2 people died in attacks on 3 Hezbollah bases. Israeli helicopters also shelled Lebanese villages. The second attack by Hezbollah this evening killed another Israeli soldier. A United Nations aid convoy has finally got into the Bosnian city of Mostar for the first time in 2 months, though it didn't reach the sealed-off Muslim quarter. In Geneva, the Bosnian Muslims said progress in the talks depended on the complete withdrawal of Bosnian Serbs from Mount Igman. And a quick look at the markets. In London, the 100-share index fell 8 points to close at 30.65. In New York, the Dow was up 7 to 36.12. The pound fell over half a pfennig against the mark, to 2 marks 54.1. It fell 1 cent and a third in New York, closing at $1.50.5. 2 Britons today pushed the performance of the human body beyond its previous limits. Sally Gunnell won the women's 400 metres hurdles at the Athletics World Championship in Stuttgart, becoming the first British woman to hold a track world record for 26 years. And in Norway, the cyclist Graham Obrey won the 4-kilometre individual pursuit on a homemade bicycle, also breaking the world record. British record breakers may be rare, but around the world, records continue to tumble, prompting the question, is there a point beyond which the human body cannot go? Last Sunday, Britain's Linford Christie swept up the gold in the 100 metres in Stuttgart. It was the 2nd fastest time in history. He didn't quite take the record, but no one doubts that he or someone else soon will. It's a long, long way from the first Olympiad in 776 BC. Or is it? Sadly, no one timed the Greek athletes whose prowess was legendary. Speed and strength were the highest qualities a man could possess. They ran naked and barefoot, palms outstretched, head slightly forward. It may be, we'll never know, that the ancient Greeks held all the records. All we do know is that the first timed 100-metre record fell to a Belgian, Emile de Ray, in 1893. He ran it in 10.8 seconds. Jim Hines first broke the 10-second barrier with a 9.99 seconds in 1968. And now it's down to 9.86, set by Carl Lewis 2 years ago. For all athletes, the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, embodies the ideal of self-improvement. But how much further can the human body go? Roger Black is Britain's #1 at 400 metres. He believes records are becoming harder and harder to break.
Records are there to be broken, and there's such a high standard. To break them, you have to be a supreme athlete. But I think what we're seeing is that just through evolution, I suppose, and natural development, records are getting harder and harder to break, and when they are being broken, the increments of breaking them are getting smaller and smaller. But I personally think that man will go on to break the records. I don't think records will ever be unbreakable.
They're settled.
But drugs have upset all these nice calculations. Ben Johnson may not have surprised many when he stole his gold medal in Seoul, but it was yet more evidence that even some of the best athletes felt the only way to break records was to swallow steroids.
And the world record has gone again. Gunnell from Farmer Patrick, and Gunnell and attacking
Today,
her on the
athletics
line.
is burdened with a set of records from the 1980s that many believe were the result of drug taking.
Over a second, and the world record has gone too.
Tonight's world record for Sally Gunnell in the 400 metres hurdles is only the second in an Olympic event in women's athletics since drug screening became so rigorous 5 years ago. But as Sally Gunnell proves tonight, you can reach new peaks without taking drugs. Those who train at the University of Birmingham certainly believe that. Critical muscles can be identified and worked on. New and advanced equipment and special training programs can be matched to the athlete's physique.
One would hope that through the knowledge that we get in sports science, that's biomechanics, psychology, exercise physiology, that we'll be able to advise the athletes to change their training or to modify their training to enhance their performance so that the non-drug induced performances can approach and if not surpass those performances that have been induced by use of artificial stimulants.
And records, particularly in men's athletics, are still being broken. Financial rewards apart, those that really want to push the limits of human endeavour have to look for motivation from within. No one watching Linford Christie, the oldest ever world and Olympic champion, could doubt the amount of inner concentration that went into his win.
And everybody wants to win, but it'll be the one that believes he can win and needs to win that in the end will win 9 out of 10 times. There are a lot of people out there with natural talent, and I personally do believe that it's that mental edge, that mental belief that does make the difference between gold and silver.
Since Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, 15 seconds have been taken off his record. But 30 years from now, will someone have taken another 15 seconds off it? Well, I hope there'll be someone I can ask just that question to, Professor Roger Bartlett, who's chairman of the Association of Sports Sciences. Do you think drugs have ruined it all, or do you think there are records that still will go on being taken?
I think the records still will go on falling. I think as Roger Black made on that clip you showed there, the increments will become smaller and smaller probably, and certainly in some of the...
How small can they get?
Well, as small as one can measure them accurately to, I suppose.
They'll invent an instrument, will they, that can do a millionth of a second or something?
Well, I don't know at the moment that we've got to that sort of limit. I mean, we don't know what the genetic limitations on human performance in sport are. And I think it would be very rash to suggest that we're getting very close to those limits. We don't know that we are.
But just to be clear about that Roger Bannister thing, the question we raised earlier, I mean, the idea that in 30 years, 15 seconds came off his 4-minute mile, could 15 seconds come off that in the next 30 years? That, you think, won't happen because the graph goes up?
I think so. I mean, I certainly think there will be seconds knocked off of it. I don't think it's likely to be as much as 15 seconds. But I think some of the points there that John Challis made are valid ones, that increasingly at this level of performance, athletes have access to all sorts of support services, coaching, sports science, sports medicine, which are helping to enable athletes to carry on pushing these barriers back. And those services are improving, they're getting better, they're becoming more accessible to athletes, but there's still very, very many questions that we don't know the answers to as sports scientists, for example, that when we do that research and find the answers, that the information will be available to coaches and athletes to get even better.
But when you say get even better, I mean, people have been getting even better all over the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, what is it? Is it something about the equipment, something about the types of techniques, something about when we watched Linford Christie there, concentrating before that 100 metres, something about the way in which they're going to do that's going to be somehow better than the way they've done it before? Surely, how
Well, I think, you see, Linford Christie is using techniques there that most sprinters would not have been using 5 years ago. The fact that they are known to the coaches and to the athletes, and they are used by the coaches and the athletes to enhance the performance of the athletes, I think that's what's new, the applicability of them. But if you're looking at, for example, training, a very important issue, we do not yet have a very scientific way of identifying training loads in order to enable an athlete to peak. Many coaches and scientists would still say that the setting of those loads is an art rather than a science. But increasingly research is being carried out in this country and elsewhere, which will enable us to have a far more scientifically rigorous way of fixing training loads, which will help to enhance performance, but also will probably help to reduce injury and overtraining.
Now, I know it's a ridiculous question, but do you think it's just conceivable that 2,500 years ago the Spartans were running 100 metres in 9 seconds or something?
I don't think it's very likely, although, as you say, we don't know. I don't think they would have been fit enough to have been able to have done that.
See,
at the
why
time.
not? Because I mean, they live not a great deal shorter lives than we did, but some of them live longer lives than many of us did. Why couldn't they have trained up and gone for it without us knowing how long they took to do it?
Well, I suppose there's a valid point there. We will never know the answer to that, will we? Because we don't have